Elijah sprinted toward the saloon, dodging bullets as chaos raged around him. Colt McBride spotted him and sneered. "Should have stayed dead, Sheriff," Colt barked, drawing his twin pistols. Elijah rolled behind a barrel as Colt fired, bullets ripping through the wood. Taking a deep breath, Elijah sprang up. One shot, straight through Colt's shoulder. Colt howled, staggering backward, but still standing. "You're dead, Graves!" Elijah narrowed his eyes. Not today. He fired again. Colt's chest exploded in blood. The outlaw crumpled, eyes wide in shock. As he fell, some of Dawson's men saw him go down, and their morale broke. Cries of retreat echoed through the battlefield. Ben grinned, firing another round. "They're falling back, Sheriff. We're winning." Jeb Dawson watched his men scatter, rage twisting his face. "No, no, no, this ain't how it ends." He turned to his last remaining riders. "Bring out the girl." Elijah, catching his breath, watched in horror as Dawson's men dragged Madeline Dawson into the street, a gun pressed to her temple. Jeb's smile was venomous. "You take my men? I take your little traitor. Drop your gun, Sheriff, or she dies." Elijah's grip tightened on his revolver. The town fell silent, watching, waiting. Ben whispered, "Sheriff, we can't..." Elijah stepped forward, heart pounding. Dawson grinned. "That's right. Come slow, like a good boy." Elijah's fingers twitched. Then came the scream. Noah, small but fearless, threw a rock, hitting Jeb square in the forehead. Jeb cursed, stumbling back, and Elijah moved. A single gunshot rang out. Jeb Dawson's face twisted in shock as he looked down at the smoking hole in his chest. His knees buckled. He collapsed, gasping, his hand reaching for something unseen. Then he was still. The remaining outlaws turned tail and fled. The town erupted in cheers. Red Creek had won. Elijah exhaled, holstering his gun. He turned to Noah and ruffled his hair. "You got a hell of an arm, son." Noah beamed. "Just like you, Sheriff." For the first time in weeks, Red Creek was safe. Or so they thought. The town of Red Creek stood battered but victorious. Jeb Dawson lay dead in the street, his men scattered like dust in the wind. For the first time in years, the people of Red Creek felt hope. But Sheriff Elijah Graves knew better. As he stood on the steps of the sheriff's office, his sharp eyes caught movement at the town's edge. A lone rider draped in black, watching from the distance. A warning? A scout? Or something worse? Madeline Dawson, still shaken from her near execution, stepped beside him. "Jeb was bad, Elijah, but Black Hollow? They're a nightmare." Ben Carter nodded grimly. "Word travels fast. If they think we're weak, they'll come. We need to be ready." Elijah exhaled, gripping his revolver. "Then we make the first move." Elijah and a group of volunteers rode out under cover of darkness. Their goal, reach Black Hollow's hideout before the gang could strike. The forest outside Red Creek was thick, moonlight barely breaking through the canopy. Every rustling leaf felt like a whisper of danger. Then, a whistle. Before anyone could react, gunfire erupted from the trees. "Elijah, it's an ambush!" Ben yelled. Elijah's horse reared, nearly throwing him off. He hit the ground, rolling just as a bullet whizzed past his head. He fired blindly into the trees, the crack of revolvers filling the night. Men screamed, hooves thundered, chaos. And then, silence. Elijah pushed himself up, his heart pounding. His men were either dead or scattered. He was alone. A bootstep behind him. A deep, gravelly voice. "Been looking for you, Sheriff." Elijah turned, eyes locking onto a towering figure. Clayton Grimes, the leader of Black Hollow. Clayton Grimes was a legend in the outlaw world, known for his ruthlessness. He leaned on his rifle, studying Elijah like a hunter, sizing up prey. "You're a tough one, Graves," Clayton said, grinning. "Took out Dawson. Stood your ground. I respect that." Elijah stayed silent, gripping his revolver. Clayton chuckled. Don't bother, you're outnumbered, but I ain't here to kill you. Elijah narrowed his eyes. Then why are you here? Clayton's grin widened. A proposition. Work for me. Elijah's blood ran cold. Not in 100 lifetimes. Clayton sighed, shaking his head. Shame. 'Cause if you say no, Red Creek burns. Every man, woman, and child. Elijah clenched his fists. There was no way he'd let that happen. Dawn broke over Red Creek as Clayton Grimes and his men rode in. They expected no resistance. They were wrong. From the rooftops, townsfolk aimed their rifles. From the alleyways, farmers gripped makeshift weapons. And at the center of it all, Elijah Graves stood, his badge gleaming in the morning light. Clayton's smile faded. You really think you can stop me? Elijah cocked his revolver. I know I can. The two locked eyes. The town held its breath. Then the guns blazed. The streets exploded in chaos, but this time, Red Creek was ready. Elijah weaved through the battle, dodging bullets as he closed in on Clayton. The outlaw leader fired, grazing Elijah's arm. But Elijah didn't stop. One shot, two shots. Clayton staggered, clutching his chest, disbelief in his eyes. Then he fell. The remaining outlaws, leaderless, fled into the desert. Red Creek had won, for good this time. As the sun rose over Red Creek, Elijah stood in the center of town, surrounded by his people. Ben, wounded but alive, clapped him on the back. Hell of a fight, Sheriff. Madeline smiled. You saved us. Noah tugged at Elijah's coat. Does this mean we're safe now? Elijah knelt, resting a hand on the boy's shoulder. It means we fight for what's right, no matter what. The town cheered. For the first time in a long time, Red Creek belonged to the people. And Elijah Graves, the man they once doubted, was now the legend who saved them all. Ride with us into the next chapter. Subscribe now for more thrilling adventures in Red Creek.